Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 9th of '08, and I'm grateful to be here. I didn't get nervous until I sat down, and I was like, oh shit, like this is happening. Thank you, Stephen, for the opportunity. I actually, when I moved here from Salt Lake City on Halloween of last year, and when I started coming to meetings and I was asked to do this, I was actually excited to, because it's a good way to let y'all know who I am, right? And be seen, because Alcoholics Anonymous is an important part of who I am, and part of the reason why I felt comfortable making a relocation like I was, is because I knew I'd find the rooms. And I had a choice between here, Austin, and Houston. I had heard and experienced Dallas AA prior, and that was what really motivated me to choose Dallas out of the others, and it hasn't disappointed. So I hope that I can share something tonight that you all can relate to. I expect that you will, because that's what happens in meetings, right? If not, then I'm clearly lying. And also, I'm really grateful. This is gonna be I've been sober for over 13 years, and the people in Salt Lake have heard all my shit. It's and y'all haven't, so it's a whole new audience. So I'm really grateful for that. So I will start from the beginning, right? I am the oldest of 3 children. I did not grow up in Salt Lake City, but I did grow up in Phoenix, Arizona, in the suburbs of Phoenix. I did grow up Mormon as well, which is an incredibly important part of why I started drinking and my story in general. And so I'll say that growing up, I was the oldest, upper middle class family. Always wanted to be that perfect Mormon boy, right? I have 2 younger sisters. My closest sister to me is 4 years younger than me. And I always felt this obligation to be just the best that I possibly could be. In high school, and I was president of my elementary school, president of my junior high. Always active in student council, always active in choir, always active in theater, and such the gay little boy, but also not the gay little boy because I was a Mormon. And so, but I always felt a little different. I was the type of kid where I got along better with the parents than my peers, especially in church. The parents always looked at me as look at Christopher, he's this perfect example of what you should be. And so that caused a lot of resentment with the guys my age, and I just never got along. And I always felt I was bullied a lot for being that way, which was confusing to me because that's what I thought we were supposed to do, right? I thought I was just I followed the rules, I tried to be the best I could, and it just didn't get me what I wanted. I just felt I didn't belong ever. I continued on through high school, and so when I graduated from high school, I was 18, and the expectation was that I went on a Mormon mission. And so I went on a Mormon mission when I was 19. I served a mission in Milan, Italy, which I thought was the perfect, well, I didn't know at the time, but as I look back, it was the perfect mission for me, right? I served in Milan, and I was in Milan during Fashion Week, and at the time they did men's and women's Fashion Week, and that was my favorite time of the year. And our P days, we would I would make my companions, because you always have a companion with you at all times. I'd make my companions go shopping with me. We'd go to Dolce & Gabbana and Armani, and we'd just do all that stuff. That was my idea of a good time. The only person I baptized in my mission was a model named Aina from Sweden. She later confessed to me that the reason she got baptized is because she was in love with me. And so in the grand scheme of things, I didn't feel my mission was all that successful, and but during my mission, I had some realizations, right? Not only, I'd always thought I was gay, but I never had acted on being gay. I'd fallen in love with a couple of the guys on my mission, never took any action there, right? And I should say, I hadn't had a drink at this time either. Growing up Mormon, there's a thing called the word of wisdom, and you're taught at a very young age, can't drink coffee, Smoke, drink, alcohol, drugs, all of that. And as the obedient kid that I was, I just did that and obeyed. And so, but on my mission, I had this realization of like that I was a bit of a perfectionist, right? And it was really upsetting to me on my mission that I just didn't feel like I was doing good enough, right? I was doing everything I was supposed to, but like I just wasn't living up to this expectation of like baptizing tons of people, being like the assistant to the president, being like all this extra stuff. And that's like the first time where it's like kind of like the perfectionism started to like really wear on me, and really having a difficult time. So I came home from my mission and went to school in Arizona for a bit. And there's then I went to Utah. My sisters were going to BYU. And so I was like, well, I'll go to Utah. I didn't want to go to BYU. In honesty, I couldn't get into BYU. It's very difficult to get a BYU, and I was not that good of a student. So I went to another university in the same area, and during that time, this was the time of AOL and gay.com, and so I was on the AOL chat rooms, and I started talking to some guys, and I had made the decision that like I was going to have my what I determined was like my gay summer. I was going to just test the waters and see if it fit. And if it fit, then like I would move forward with it. So I was at the time studying to be a dentist, like my dad. And so I moved back to Arizona and staying with my parents. And I was taking like this prep course for the DAT. And started to like meet the guys I was talking to on AOL.com, in the chat rooms, and say that it stuck, right? I realized, okay, I guess I am a bit gay, right? Like, and I finally made that decision, right? And no, for me, like that's a really big decision, because by choosing that, like, okay, I'm going to accept this part of myself, I am deciding to turn away from everything I was taught, right? And so there's a lot of guilt and a lot of shame associated in this moment. And granted, I still haven't drank or used any drugs at this time either. My dad found out that I had been seeing men and confronted me and outed me on a family vacation. It was terrible. And I was given a choice of like, go to therapy and change, or we don't want anything to do with you. And I had never been financially independent. I was kind of stuck in this spot, right? Like, it's like, I didn't think I could do this by myself. And so I said, I'll go to therapy. I'll change. Getting emotional about this, and I don't know why. I've worked past all of this. And so I went to therapy, and, like that lasted maybe a month, and I decided like this isn't going to work. And so the only other place I had lived other than Arizona and Italy is Utah. And so I packed up my things and moved to Utah again, moved back to Utah, dropped out of school. My parents were paying for school. My parents were paying for my apartment. My parents were paying for everything at the time. And, like I had decided like I can't live this double life, and therapy is not what I want. And so I go to Utah and I get a job, and I start to live like authentically to what I thought was authentically, right? Like finally I was like, okay, I'm like gay, I'm free, and I'm in a party, and it's going to be great. Because I had decided to leave the church and leave my family and like all of that behind, I was like, well, like everything I was taught must be wrong. So I'm now going to test the waters. Just say at this time how old was I? Like 22 or 23. And so that is when I started to drink, right? Because of a lot of the guilt, the shame, not knowing exactly who I am, and just like trying to fit in so desperately, like I was as a child, right? Like, and so I remember my first drink. It was on a date with this guy named Damon, who later became a really good friend of mine. And I didn't know what to order because and I wanted to seem cool and not be like, I've never had a drink before. This is my first drink. So I was like, I'll have a rum and Coke. No, was it a rum and Coke? Yes, it was a rum and Coke. Which I didn't particularly like, but I had just seen it on television. I knew that's something people did and drank. So I had a rum and Coke at Todd's Bar and Grill in Salt Lake City. And just one that day, that one, and didn't really think anything of it. Then I started to go out to the bar, the gay bars. I remember going to my first gay bar and just having a drink and then having another drink and then having another drink because I felt so uncomfortable being there. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to be a gay guy, and I didn't know how to drink or how to do any of this stuff. And so alcohol became really my key to that, and how I could fit in. And very quickly I would drink to just I'd be passed out, and then I would be crying, and then sleeping in the car, mad at someone and sleeping in my car, right? And just doing dramatic shit all the time. I met a group of drag queens. I feel like everyone meets a group of drag queens, right? It's always a part of the story. Thank God for drag queens, because they taught me so much about what it was like to do stuff that I thought was so cool and to feel a belong and a part of. And I adopted that. This is also during the years of Facebook or of MySpace, and I don't know if this was the thing everyone did, but in Salt Lake City, everyone gave themselves different names on Facebook. And so I became Fancy Christopher in the club is what my name was, right? And so everyone referred to me as Fancy Christopher. I was everything but fancy, but I thought I was fancy. And I was introduced to cocaine. Drugs are a very big part of my story. I'll say alcohol was my drug of choice, and then cocaine as well. I was introduced to cocaine, and that is when I really felt like I was just the best thing that has ever happened to Salt Lake City, and just was going out every single night, and that continued on, right, for a handful of years. There's moments where I couldn't keep a job. I was actually just talking to my barber yesterday about this. I had outed myself as an alcoholic, and we were talking about it, and I was I honestly don't know how I afforded that lifestyle, as a server, working in a call center, buying a shit ton of drugs and drinking at a bar, right? I was not a home drinker. I was out at the bar drinking, and I just partied a hell of a lot. There was a moment where my parents, my dad ended up getting prostate cancer. And at this time we still weren't talking, right? I hadn't gone home. But when he got prostate cancer, I remember him calling me before he went into surgery, and I was really, really high at the time, and so was he. But which was made for a really good conversation. But I remember that it was kind of that scary moment. I think it was a scary moment for them as well. And so we started to have a little bit of a relationship and a little bit of communication. He recovered and was fine. I continued to just party and use, and they asked if I would want to go back to school, because at this time I hadn't been going to school. I couldn't afford it. And they offered to pay for my school. My parents are very codependent. They offered to pay for my school, and I was like, okay, but they're like, you have to come back. You have to come to Arizona so you can get in-state tuition. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this will help fix what chaos and this partying. I need to change something. So I'll move back to Arizona. I remember throwing myself in Salt Lake. We had this bar called Area 51, where upstairs was theme nights, and then downstairs was goth night. And on Tuesday, Thursdays was 80s night. We'd go and party and drink and dance. And I remember one night at Area 51 throwing my going to rehab party, telling everyone I was moving to Arizona, and I told everyone I was moving to Arizona to go to rehab, and like we were all celebrating, like, yay, you're gonna go to rehab. I wasn't going to rehab at all. I don't know like why I thought that was a good idea, but like it's just a good example of like the bullshit that I would pull. And so I had my going to rehab party. I didn't tell my roommates I was moving. My dad came into town. We packed my things up and I left. Right? I just disappeared. I found someone to take my room in my apartment, and just disappeared and went to Arizona and tried to go to school. I will say, like, I went to Arizona. I ended up going to Arizona State. I wasn't going to live with my parents, but so I found an apartment, and like the chaos just continued in Arizona just as much. I dropped out of classes, withdrew from classes. I even took Italian classes, like Italian 101, thinking like this will be easy. I speak Italian, and I couldn't even like finish Italian 101. And I would drop out of it. And I remember like getting drunk, buying a bottle of wine, drinking before I went to my gender communications class, and then fighting in class with like my co-students. And I thought school was bullshit, and I just couldn't do it. I was again working in a call center, and I remember I ended up getting a DUI on Christmas Eve of 2007, coming home from Charlie's, if anyone's been to Phoenix. Also like having only drank in Arizona or in Utah, and then coming to Arizona and finding out like they do things like 2 for 1, which I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing, like 2 for 1, right? And like free pours and things like that, because in Utah is not like that at all. It's very restricted. And so I just continued to drink and drink more. And I got a DUI coming home from Charlie's on Christmas Eve, 2 blocks from my house in Tempe. And the police pulled me over, did the tests on the street, and then arrested me. Luckily, I was parked in the ASU campus parking lot, so I could just leave my car there. Didn't have to get towed. I had a parking permit. It was perfect. They processed me and then released me on the street, and I walked home. And, so like, I don't know, DUIs in Arizona is required jail time. And so I spent, number one, like it's required jail time, and it's tent city is where you have to go. You have to wear the pink underwear, the whole thing. I don't know if they still do that, but this is when I got my DUI, that was the thing that we had to do. I had manipulated my way into the female facility because I told them I felt unsafe as a gay man in tent city. And so I was able to, I knew someone that got me into the female facility in my own jail cell. I live tweeted from jail. That I remember watching American Idol and tweeting from my jail cell. And so like even like I was able to manipulate myself into like a better situation. I lied to like my therapist that was like instead I had gone to rehab, because remember I told everyone I was coming to, so I just used that same story with my therapist that like, hey, I've already gone to rehab. I'm well familiar with like being sober. I don't think I need to do this extra therapy. So they gave me, instead of meetings, because I did not want to come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know why, but I just knew I didn't want to come here. Well, I should say I knew it was because of God. I will tell you, like I knew God was involved, and that's why I did not want to come here. And so I was able to go to like this once a week class, paid, I don't remember how much, a lot of money for this DUI. And it's funny, like the lawyer that was assigned to me, he told me, is like, oh, you go to ASU, it's like a requirement to graduate to get a DUI from this school. And I was like, well, there we go. At least I have one requirement to graduate, because I don't have anything else to graduate from this school, because I'm not really going to class. But I went to a DUI, never told my parents anything about that, and just kind of like took care of it myself. I had a suspended license, and so I would take the bus to the bar, because this was also before Uber. It's so much easier to drink now, I think, these days. Like, this was before Uber, and taxis were too expensive, so I figured out how to use the bus system so I could go to BS West in Scottsdale, get drunk, and then stay the night at a friend's house and have them bring me home. And so like really the whole thing that, like, when I was in Arizona, it just continued on like that. I made friends with I found a drug dealer. Her name was Juanita. It was one night I got in a taxi and asked him to find me cocaine. And so he drove me to Van Buren. And two men took my money and gave me a pack of cigarettes and said they would be right back. They never came back. I had their pack of cigarettes. But luckily this nice prostitute was walking down the street named Juanita, and she hooked me up with some drugs, and her and I became friends. And so I used to go to her hotel room, and she would tell everyone I was her son. She would borrow my car, take my car to go buy drugs, and then come back for me. And so, which, like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, letting some stranger take my car, like, to go buy me drugs. And so, you know, like, it was like the end of the semester, and my roommate and I obviously weren't getting along because I was a nightmare of a roommate. And so another day, just packed up my things again and moved into my parents' house as like a temporary solution until I was going to find a new place during the summer. And I had planned this trip. I thought it was like I was going to go back to Salt Lake City for Pride weekend. This is June of 2008. And so I pack up my stuff, move into my parents' house, had my license back, and went out to happy hour with some friends before I was leaving, and came home drunk to my parents' house, and my dad was not happy. And so, like, he kicked me out again, and I was flying out to Salt Lake the next day. And so I was like, I don't know where to go. So I went and checked into a Motel 6 right outside of Sky Harbor Airport. Went to visit Juanita and got some crack and some beer and smoked and drank all night long in the Motel 6 at Sky Harbor. And then got in my car for my 8 o'clock flight and flew out to Salt Lake City for Pride weekend. And, you know, like, Pride weekend was just an opportunity to party, see all my friends that I'd had before, and just get wasted and party hard. And, you know, like, that's what I did. I remember I lost my shoes and I lost my phone, and I walked home to my friend's house that first night. Woke up the next day, like, had missed the parade, missed everything. Everyone was already gone. And so, like, went and got a new phone, and then went and partied more. Went home with a bunch of people. And then Monday morning came around, and I had lunch plans with one of my really, really good friends. Her name is Chelsea, and she wanted to see me before we left because she had something she wanted to talk about. And so I met her for lunch. I'll tell you that we went to this Mexican food restaurant that I loved. She ate. I had a margarita and some pills that I had stolen from the hookup the night before. And at that lunch, she basically told me, she's like, you know, like, I can't be your friend anymore. It's just like, unless you make some changes. I didn't know this at the time, but she was dating someone in Alcoholics Anonymous who, and she had been coming around in the rooms a little bit and kind of testing the waters. Her and I had partied together, and so she realized that, like, maybe things could get better. And so she kind of had, like, this little, like, intervention with me at the Blue Iguana. And, you know, like, that was the first time I sat across from someone that told me they thought I had a problem that I had, like, used with and drank with, that truly understood, right? My parents had told me many times that I had a problem, but they didn't understand. My bosses have told me I had a problem. My roommates had told me I had a problem, but they didn't understand, right? They're just not the same as I am. But when Chelsea did, it kind of hit. Well, it hit hard. It didn't kind of hit. It hit really hard. And so I said, like, you're right. I just don't know what to do. And if I don't drink and I don't use anymore, I won't be fun. And she pulled that line of, like, well, you're not fun now. So And that was like a hit to my ego, right? Like I thought like it was just so much fun all the time. And it helped me realize I wasn't. So my go-to, call my parents. I called my dad at his office, and he was with a patient, and I told the secretary, I was like, no, this is an emergency. And he got on the phone, and I told him, I was like, I'm not coming back to Arizona until I learn to not drink. And I think those were like the magic words that he wanted like to hear, right? Is like, okay, I'll call you back. I don't know how, but like I got to my friend's house and I passed out. I wake up and my mom is there here in Salt Lake City with her sister. And I should say like with her sister, and my cousin, who is her son, is sober as well, right? He had gotten sober a couple years before, and they took me to a hospital and checked me into a hospital. And like in intake, they asked like, what did you use? What did you drink? How often do you drink? And I just like, I didn't know really what was happening, other than like I was going to a rehab center, and I will see like what happened. So 3 or 4 days, I don't even know how long I was there. I was out for most of it. I remember my cousin Reichel, who's sober, came to visit me, and gave me a big book and brought a friend, and a couple other friends came to visit me as well. And then the day came that I was being checked out of rehab. In my mind, I thought I was going to Cirque Lodge when I got out of rehab. And Cirque Lodge is like this bougie, celebrity, Park City rehab center. But I was told I was actually going to a place called Renaissance Ranch, and that I was going to love it. It's going to be great, and that it is LDS based. And I was like, oh. No, this is not what I want. And so I was like, I'm fine. I made a mistake. Like, I can get better. Like, I don't need to go to rehab anymore. This is not what I want. And, you know, like, there was a nurse there, and she was a lesbian. And she took me into, like, their little, like, nurses area, and she sat me down, and she's like, hey, like, I know this is probably not what you want, but I've seen other people go to this treatment center, and, like, you should just see what happens. Like, they're good people. It will be okay. Didn't know this woman, and like for some reason I was like, okay, like I'll just try it. God, like so many times, like now that we're starting to get me sober, like this I will try it business like has brought me here today, right? So I tried it. No one told me before we left that I couldn't smoke and I couldn't have coffee. I should have known, but like those were things I could have. And so I really wish I would have had those things before I got into this van. But they took me to this treatment center, and I was the first day there, that first night is a little groggy, but like I know that we went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It was my first ever Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I sat in the back seat, the back row, and that's when it like hit me of like, okay, like I can't drink anymore. Like this is forever. And all I could do, my only reaction to that was like tears, so many tears, and so upset. And I cried all the way home in the van, and my roommate, who was so hot, he was so hot, and I was like so grateful that I had a hot roommate. I just remember, I'll say that. We later became really good friends, but I was like, I think because he was hot, like I listened to him because I'm that shallow. And so, but he was really hot, and he's like, hey, look, I've done this before, like just do this 24 hours at a time, and like if you still want to leave, go leave tomorrow, right? So I like, okay, like all of a sudden this willingness like has started to like creep into my life. And like, I really know, like now looking back, all this is my first step, right? Like finally admitting and I was powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable, and like hoping that there was something greater than me that could help me stay sober here. And I'll say I forgot one piece of like before we went to Alcoholics Anonymous, we had an internal meeting, and like I had to introduce myself as the new guy of the group, and as like, I'm Christopher. I'm an alcoholic, or I think I might be an alcoholic, but I have been sober from crystal meth for 6 months. I'm gay, and I will not be Mormon. That was like how I introduced myself. And they all clap. Yay, welcome. I'll say that I had not been sober from crystal meth for 6 months. I don't know like why I would say that. But I definitely wanted to build up that wall and let everyone know, like, I'm a gay man. I am not going to be Mormon, and like anything you do is not going to work with me. But they all like welcomed me and were happy that I was there. And that continued on while I was in treatment. I'll say that like, I'm really grateful. There was like, I did not feel like I belonged in that group. Straight Mormon men and I had never really gotten together like a vibe, especially growing up, like being bullied by my peers. It was a group of people that I just would not want to spend time with. But I grew to love them and listen to them. There was one therapist there that was not a Mormon. He was a Jewish man, and I could relate to him because he was like other to me, you know, like we were the others in this group. And Mark Pepper is his name, and I'm forever grateful for him because like he also would tell me like, just give it a try. It's good. Like I was sober. Listening to his story is what clicked for me, not necessarily the other guys in the treatment center. And Mark connected me with 2 gay sober men in Salt Lake City, and told me to call them, and I did. And so when I left treatment, I was determined I was going to be, just like as a child, like I was going to be the gold star sober individual, right? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the very best that I can possibly do it. And so I went to a meeting that first day out of treatment center, met one of the guys and picked up, I was there for 90 to 60 days. I was there for 60 days. So I picked up my 60-day chip in that meeting and share that like I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I had made a decision to stay in Salt Lake City because they suggested to stay in Salt Lake City, and I was going to do the aftercare program. And so after that first meeting outside of treatment, a couple people offered to take me to coffee. I should say Chelsea, the one that had asked me to like change, she came to that meeting with me as well. And so Chelsea and I went with some people and got coffee and phone numbers, and then they told me like, hey, come to this another meeting tomorrow. And so I did that. And I started to like go to meetings, and you know, like when I went to some meetings, I would not go to LGBTQ plus meetings. I would only go to straight meetings because I didn't think I belonged, and like I had this thing against gay people. Just didn't think that they like knew what they were talking about. It's like only the straight people could be. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I had this thing against gay meetings. So I would never go to a gay meeting. But then my sponsor like told me I should. This other man, his name was Larry, and he's become my adopted father in Salt Lake City. He was like an amazing man. We would fight all the time. He'd make suggestions like go to gay meetings, and I say no, I'm not going to go to gay meetings because I'm XYZ. He's like, well, just think about it and let me know tomorrow. And then like I would call him and be like, I'm sorry, Larry, like you're right, I'll try a gay meeting. And so when I went to a gay meeting, I was shocked because like there was actually 2 people that I had partied and used with that were in that meeting: Whiskey Meg, Gorgeous Jared, and then me, Fancy Christopher, right? And I was like, oh my God, like if Whiskey Meg is sober and Gorgeous Jared is sober, then like maybe Fancy Christopher could pull through on this, right? And so we became like the 3 amigos in meetings, right? And it was like a fucking miracle. Like both of them had gotten sober before. We had lost connection, and they were there. And so like I would go to meetings with them. We would go to dinner. We started making friends. We would sit in the back and like make fun of everyone, but like still listen. And then it's like, and like it was just like things started to like come together, and I started to have this like community of sober people. I will say that neither of them are sober today, but I am, and like I'm grateful for that, right? I love them still, but yeah. So you know, like in Salt Lake, and I graduated from rehab, and I now have a lifetime membership to my rehab center. So if I ever relapse, I could go back for free. Isn't that generous of them? Like, which I would never, even if I relapsed, I was like, there's no way I will go back. And like, it was what I needed though. Like if I, as I look back, like if I would have gone to Circle Lodge, I don't trust that I would have stayed sober. What I needed is like the grit of Alcoholics Anonymous in like this, where like I just didn't belong and like I had to like work for it. But you know, like I decided to stay in Salt Lake City. Like it became comfortable. I quit my job. They had put me, I was on medical leave, so I was getting paid to be at rehab, which like is amazing. And I decided to stay in Salt Lake. I just enrolled in online school through ASU and started finishing my degree. And this life grew up with me in Salt Lake. I will tell you that like I wanted, like, while I decided to live there, I was always saying that I was moving, right? I was gonna move. There was this thing that I was gonna go do. I was gonna move. I was gonna leave. But I just found a home and a family in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it really just became my life there. And I'm really grateful for that. I say that like, and the people in Salt Lake had put up with a lot of stuff with me, because it's like, as I continued to stay sober, life got good. But like, I would say if I was that guy that would sit in meetings and then say things like, I'm only here to be sober, I'm not here to be your friend, and I hate all of you. Like in a meeting. That's like how, like I was such a little bitch, like so often, but like they all continued to love me and show me like how to be sober, and like being sober. And as I've worked the 12 steps, it has finally allowed me to know authentically who I am and to be able to show up as Christopher, which I had never done before. It's a place in Alcoholics Anonymous is where I felt that I belonged, where I can show up and people still care about me. I've never been bullied here. I was bullied in church. I was bullied in school. I felt like I didn't belong. But in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's not been the case. And, you know, like, I've experienced death. My grandparents both, like I was very close to my grandma in Salt Lake, and my grandpa had died, and then 30 days to the day after, my grandmother died. And I was in a meeting both times when I found out both of them had died, which, like, what a better place to be, right? And I was able to be with people that I cared about and cared about me. I was laid off from jobs, all these things that I thought like I couldn't ever like survive being sober. And the people in Alcoholics Anonymous showed me how to do that, and were there for me. And, you know, like it's been an incredible journey, because I have continued to work those steps, and I have found the ability to look at myself in the mirror and love who I am. And be happy with who I am and not try to change myself. And I will say that the 12th step has become the most important step to me today, because I truly have had a spiritual awakening as I look at how I live my life today, how I show up, who I am. And so I continue to try to practice the principles every day and carry the message. And, you know, like, I don't know, like I did not expect to be here, as in being here as sober at 13 years, but I'm so grateful that I am, and that I had listened and had those moments of willingness to be like, okay, I'll just try it. That goes against everything that I had ever like been before. So really grateful also to be in Dallas, and thank you all for being so welcoming and kind to me. It's kind of weird, because I feel like I'm a newcomer again when I show up to meetings and I don't know anyone, because like at home everyone knew me, and like we all had our jokes and like our things, and like here I don't have that, and it's been difficult, but I have always felt welcomed in Dallas, and I'm really grateful for that, and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to share my story with you all today.